All right, welcome back to the program. In case you're just joining us, it's time for us to take a look at our interview right now. We're looking at Nigeria's tech sector. And my guest is joining me right now from Lagos. I must say, Lagos is Nigeria's tech city or tech capital. My guest is Adetola Salau. She is the SSA to the Lagos State Governor on Education. She's also the Executive Director, Reform Entrepreneur, as well as an educator. Welcome to you, Adetola, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I said thank you for having me. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. I guess it would be nice for me to start from where you are. Like I said in my intro, Lagos State, Nigeria's tech capital, and we're seeing a lot of startups. Do you think that Lagos is still in its infancy in terms of the tech economy, or it's growing out of the infancy level right now to perhaps being a toddler?
I will say that Lagos State actually is growing out of the infancy level, and we are advancing, and we're making a lot of strides in ensuring that we're advancing. So I would not call us an infant any longer.
Oh, you are no longer an infant. I know why I brought up that question, because when it comes to technology, the city that comes to mind, or the state that comes to mind, is Lagos. Now, let's take it from there. Do you think that Nigeria's tech sector is growing as fast as Nigeria's youthful population?
Unfortunately, there's still a lot left to be desired, and I know that's part of why we're having this conversation. So we still have quite a bit of inroads to make, and of course, we need everybody on board. So that's why whenever opportunities like this spring up to discuss, and for us to have these discussions out in the public space so that everybody can start thinking about solutions and all hands can be on deck for us to start not just thinking, but actually working on these solutions. So there's a lot that we need to still do. It's a lot of work ahead of us.
Can you briefly explain perhaps to our viewers how the tech sector can really enable all other sectors in Nigeria? I was speaking with a group of young people some years ago, a group that I was mentoring and all of that, and I got speaking with them that we should not just take a look at tech, for tech's sake, because tech can enable other things that we do. There's the tech of tech itself, there's the tech of education, there's tech in agriculture, there's tech even in what I do, media, there's tech in, tech can enable other sectors. So what is your thoughts on that?
Totally, I agree. I've always told people that they should stop looking at tech as this big behemoth, but actually realize what it is for what it is, which is it's just a catalyst, it's a tool. And what it performs is it's able to be infused into every other portion, every other sector, every other theme. And then hopefully we utilize it to bring out the best that is in that sector or that theme. And you mentioned various sectors. I mean, of course, our own education. Another one I like to think about all the time is agriculture, because that's going to be a major, major, major issue in the next 5, 10, 25 years across the globe. I mean, water is another one I think about, water security. Let's see. You mentioned something else too. Well,
yes,
it just escaped me right now, but
yes, agriculture.
In every sector I can think of, one way or the other, technology is a tool that can be utilized to bring out solutions to making sure that it's equitable to everyone, and that is, of course, quality. It's not just some mediocre offering that is offered, but something that's actually substantial. And one area that, of course, that is dear to my heart, of course, is education. And when I was thinking about coming to this program, I actually was thinking about that. What if we did not have YouTube? What if we did not have Zoom last year during the pandemic? What would have happened to majority of our children who are at home? But because of YouTube, and also because of Zoom, our students were still able to connect with their colleagues. When I mean colleagues, I mean their peers, their classmates, they were still able to connect with their teachers, they were able to connect with people across the globe. And there was still some form of learning. And I said some form. It was a different form than what we're used to and what we expect, but learning still took place. And I can say this because I also am in a program and learning still took place for me. I was still learning in March, I was still learning in June 2020, and I was still learning in September 2020 via Zoom, via various other Edmondo and a lot of the other, I don't want to start calling their names, so it doesn't seem like I'm advertising for them. But, excuse me, but we were still able to connect people across the globe and we're still able to learn. And not only was this learning taking place, but there was this exchange where you were sharing knowledge, you were sharing what you had to value to other people, and they were sharing theirs to you too. So I think about that, what if that didn't exist? What would have happened? You just sit down and be bored and be scratching your head and say, oh my God, what am I going to do? But this wonderful tool was created and existed, and we're able to utilize it all across the globe to connect to people constantly. I mean, look, we're connecting to each other through that method. So it's fantastic. So that's what tech is, that catalyst that enables us to do that.
I like that you brought the aspect of YouTube into what we're discussing, or some other tech things that we use now. It's not even just for children. I tell people that if you want to learn anything, you can go on YouTube and learn it. Really, you know, except you are lazy. You don't need a teacher, the brick and mortar style anymore to learn anything. Even languages, you can go learn. I know people that are learning languages even on YouTube or, you know, other apps. So it's not a matter of even children these days. Adults can really, if I don't know anything, I go on YouTube. Even as makeup for women, you go on YouTube, you learn it. You know. Yes, so you don't have any excuse now, you know, to be lazy or to say that I can't learn anything. If we come back to the sector itself, the ICT sector, and see the contribution of Nigeria's ICT sector, perhaps from the year 2000 to where we are right now, it has grown from about 1% contribution to GDP to about 70% where it is right now. Do you think that there is more room for us to grow, especially as our youth population is growing? Because Nigeria is a youthful country. Our median age, our average age in this country is 18 years. So forget all these people that are 60-something or 50-something or 40-something or late 40s that will call themselves, I'm a youth. You are not a youth because the average age in Nigeria is 18. In fact, I was told by the National Population Commission some time ago,
Okay.
was it last year or so?
I think I want to clarify what you were asking. I think what you were asking me, do I think that the contribution of the tech sector is going to grow? Correct?
Yes. Yes, that's what I asked.
Okay. Of course, yes. We've only just tapped the beginning of what it can do. So there's only so much more room for it to grow and expand. I mean, I hate to sound like a recording that's being played over and over and over, but I'm going to repeat again about the pandemic and Zoom. I mean, before, I was just thinking about, I was just musing aloud to myself that before the lockdowns, before COVID-19 made the whole world come to a stop in March and April 2020, conference calls and going on, those platforms, I think there were so many, like I said, I don't want to mention names of others, but I remember they were mostly, people who just go in, quickly sign in on their phones, listen in. It wasn't more like a medium where you were exchanging ideas for prolonged periods, or you're using it for learning or for meetings. I mean, when I mean meetings, I'm talking formal meetings. But that changed last year. And look at how it has revolutionized a lot of the things that we do now, how we work, how we connect with each other, still go back again, how we learn. And then I think of all the other uses, that various things that we are using now on tech. In fact, I was just talking to teachers yesterday about the fact that we have normalized the fact that all our phones that we use are touchscreen phones. Once upon a time, your phones were not touching phones. They were mostly, well, first of all, were really, really basic phones. And then after that, you had to now scroll, click from the side. And then gradually, they now became these really, really smartphones that we use. And then let's even go beyond the smartphones now. We have the smart screens. We have laptops that have the smart screens. We have our TV. I mean, just the other day, I was at the bank and I was at the ATM, and majority of the ATM screens were touch screen. And all the people who were standing there in line, it was normal to them. It was like no big deal. But I mean, think about it. 2 years ago, there were no touch smart screens for those ATMs. But yet, all those people there, I'm talking every single person who stood there, and there were about 20, 25 people who stood there. It wasn't abnormal to them. Nobody struggled and said, oh my God, do I need to press this? Do I need to do this? It was normal. They were just tick, tock, tock, bam, bam, bam. So imagine all the other things that are riding ahead of us that are going to be changed. And I was telling the teachers that where I see us going next is screens that will be before us that will interact with in front of us, that each of us, maybe through our glasses or special neural links that will be implanted within us. I mean, there's so much room for it to go. And when I think about that, I think about all the applications, I think about all the uses in various sectors. So, I mean, just think about the possibilities, infinite possibilities. That's where I think of all the infinite possibilities. So there's only so much room, and there's so much that we're going to explore and so much we're going to do. And I believe it's going to be positive too.
Now let's bring in the educational part, which you are also part of, especially in Lagos State. And let's take a look at STEM itself: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You know, this is a curriculum that perhaps we need to encourage for us to be able to, you know, get the advantages, or for us to be able to harness the potentials of this high tech which we're talking about. You go to countries like United States, the UK, even India, for example, prioritize STEM. That's STEM courses, STEM curriculum. I'm talking of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. How much of this do you think we should begin to encourage in Nigeria? Because perhaps our industrialization, indigenous industrialization, innovation would also emanate from the encouragement of STEM education in Nigeria. How many people want to do engineering these days? How many people want to do mathematics? How many people want to read science? I'm a proud science person, but found my way into television. However, you know, but I'm saying, you know, so how many people want to do that, especially for where we think we should be? Many people now, they want to get into fashion. I'm not saying it's bad or the softer side. Or, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But how can we encourage STEM so that we can harness high tech?
Okay, that's exactly the role that I'm playing here for the state here at Lagos State. We are deliberately making efforts, and I'm really glad to say that we're also making strides in those efforts to make sure that we are infusing, or I'll actually call it inculcating, STEAM pedagogy, because we've actually moved to STEAM now across the world. We've added arts, so it's no longer just STEM, it's STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, because right now across the world, we're working and deliberately making sure that education is inclusive, everyone feels they're part of it, and it's important that our art students also understand that science is a huge part of their life and they're comfortable with it, so they shouldn't think that it's this obscure, scary thing that, oh, wow, why should I be a part of that? Whereas we all have our smartphones, we're all using it. I mean, look at right now, that's how we're communicating. So we're really, really pushing STEM, I would call it a STEM, or STEAM, sorry, STEAM programs, STEAM competitions, STEAM curriculum. We're constantly working on that right now, our teachers, our students, stakeholders. It's really important because across the world, they understand that the transdisciplinary approach is what works, not this discipline by itself, that discipline, that discipline. It's all of them working together to solve problems. Well, I don't like to call it problems. I like to call it challenges, to solve challenges. And I mean, look at our society. We have quite a bit. But if we're able to sit down and bring out all the applications from these various disciplines, and when I say disciplines, I mean, if we look at science, we have biology, chemistry, physics, botany, and the list goes on. We look at mathematics itself, there are various areas also in mathematics. If we bring out all these various areas and say, okay, what are the applications in these areas? Bring them out and say, okay, how do we now solve these challenges that we have in our society or societies? That's where the STEAM approach comes into play. We now say, we have this situation, let's use our critical thinking skills, let's communicate about this situation we have in front of us. We're going to collaborate, we're going to work together, we're not going to be working in silos by myself over there. Because each of us, we bring different strengths, we bring different skills, there you go, skill sets when we're solving problems. And then we now look at those solutions that we put together and we say, okay, let's carry out various iterations of these solutions and see which will fit best to this situation that's taking place right now. So I look at that and I understand, maybe because I'm also a scientist, I understand that this approach is fantastic, because why would you say, oh, physics should be by itself over here, biology by itself over here? Whereas if you look at the real world, if you look at nature, nature does not exist. Nothing is in a vacuum. Everything is always interrelated with each other. And that's the mindset that we need to start building for our students. And all across the world, like you were saying earlier, in India, in China, in Finland, in the US, they understand that, and that's the approach that are working with the students. And they're making a lot of strides in that regard, because, like I said, in nature, that's what you're seeing. When you go to the workforce, that's what you're going to deal with. You're not going to be, oh, because I'm a biologist, I'm working here, I'm working by myself. No, in projects, you have to work with other people. You have to collaborate. You have to look for solutions together.
Mm. Let's still stick with this STEM thing a bit. Now, I learned another one is team. So you've added A into it. So the A part is art. Is that what I got?
Art. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So no one is left, wanting. And not to say that our arts people are not, they don't matter. Everyone matters. Let's stick with it. Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's stick with the declining interest in STEM or STEAM now, as you put it. But perhaps for the purpose of this conversation, let's still stick with STEM. That's STEM.
Okay.
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And why I want us to stick with it a bit is because of the declining interest in it. You're seeing that a lot of tech companies are springing up day by day, not just in Nigeria, even abroad. For those that even want to migrate abroad now, they say you may have an advantage if you have one of those qualities, one of those qualifications.
Science or engineering.
Yes, that you may make it better abroad. But the declining interest we're seeing in the country, shouldn't it be a cause of concern? And why are we seeing that declining interest? Is it perhaps because we don't have qualified teachers or poor funding? I know that some companies, private companies, are even going ahead to support STEM education in Nigeria. I don't want to mention their names.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, don't mention names.
Yes.
Of course, it's a serious problem. I don't like to use that word problem, but I mean, it is what it is. It is something that I believe is of great concern to us. And that's part of why the efforts that I am part of right now with the state here in Lagos State, that our governor has entrusted me with, which is running these STEAM projects that we have here. And part of it is making sure that we work on increasing the interest, particularly girls, of our students in STEAM. Well, let's call it STEM for your purposes, of course, in STEM, because we need to increase that pipeline. I mean, I think about it all the time, and I tell people, if you look at a lot of the strides, a lot of the inventions in science, they were made by research scientists, they were made by engineers, and if you don't have people who are in that area working on those issues, then who is going to do it? I mean, come on, really, who is going to do it? You're going to have to keep on waiting for someone else to come bring their own solutions. And then when they bring it to you, you have to dance to whatever tune they tell you to dance to. A perfect example, unfortunately, is what happened. I'm going to still keep referring back to last year, COVID-19. I mean, I kept asking myself, I said, wow, imagine if we had great research portals in our universities. Wouldn't it be a matter of the professors and the students coming together and working on, working on regimens already in the labs? Like, okay, you know what, we tried that iteration with the medication, let's try this other thing, boom, 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 let's do this. And then, okay, let's do this, and then go back again and let's tweak this and let's tweak that, which is exactly what happens in universities in Europe and in the US and in Australia and in Canada. So us increasing students who actually are passionate and are excited about doing this, understanding that, wow, imagine this value and this contribution I'm going to be adding back to society, it'll be really huge. And there's so much that they're going to do. So yes, it's important to start sparking this interest. It's important to nurture it, and it's important to grow it.
You know, just like you've just brought in COVID-19, and what really came to my mind is the country called Cuba. We do know that Cuba, definitely one of their, unique selling points, fantastic doctors they have, for Cuba is done its own vaccine, homegrown vaccine. And in fact, it has developed its own vaccine that it will be vaccinating toddlers, even though the WHO hasn't given an okay to it. But Cuba said, from 2 years and above, we're going to vaccinate our people because of the surge in COVID-19. Why I'm bringing that is because of the STEM education that we're talking about. Scientists in Cuba went into the lab and brought this thing out, even as the rest of the world was coming up with their own vaccines. Cuba came up with it. What will happen if we come up with our own vaccine, for example? But it's still part of this STEM education which we're talking about. So not just in sciences, but even in technology sector, especially with the growth or the development of technology we're seeing right now around the world. That also brings me to the digital policies of the government. What's your take on these digital policies? I know we have a policy document from the Ministry of Technology and Digital Economy, 2020 to 2030. What's your thought on it? Is that what would make us, grow in that sector?
What will make us grow in that sector, in my humble opinion, is making sure that the foundation is done right. And the foundation of that area, of that sector, or any growth, any movement, any work in that sector is education. And education comes down to the teachers and the students, which means having a robust digital literacy policy. And this will happen by us making sure that we have infrastructure that will support this, capacity building for the teachers so that they can utilize what do you call them, the equipment, and then be able to pass on this knowledge to the students. And the students also being able to have the environment where they're able to utilize this infrastructure and also use it and apply it, and then also be able to start thinking and start saying, okay, how do I use this to think about solving this and solving that and doing this and doing that? So it really comes down to the foundation. The foundation needs to be right. And the only way the foundation is going to be right is by all of us. I mean, a part of it, of course, is government too. A part of it also is us in, well, I say us because I used to be in private too. It's the private sector too. So public and private working together. I always sing this song everywhere I go because it's really, really important. People need to understand, even in the nations that we admire and say, wow, look at what they're doing over there. I'm thinking about the United States, for example. It's that relationship between public and private that has created a lot of these wonderful innovations, wonderful inventions that we all use and we all love and admire. So it's that foundation that's really, 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 really important. It's so big. Teachers, students, that foundation, that education. If we don't start from there, if we don't build that pipeline of students who are really, really good. I mean, let me give you an example. I was going to school in the States during the, what I call it, tech boom. And I remember the excitement at the universities. I was a student myself. I was a student, undergrad and grad, and also undergrad and graduate school during that period in the 90s and the early 2000s. And the excitement in the schools. I was even telling someone yesterday that, yes, I used to code. That's program. And I was like, what? I said, yes, I did C++, I did Java, I did, trying to remember what else I did. But I did all that. Oh, yes, I also started doing Oracle programming too. And there was so much excitement in the air. We had all these tech companies coming to talk to us and, knowing about the possibilities, things that could be done. These things were possible because the environment was enabling. The teachers were coming back to share with us, and we were able to also utilize infrastructure that was set there for us. And a lot of it wasn't just government. Also, not private universities, private individuals also donated and made certain provisions for certain things. I used to be a public school teacher in the States, and I know, and I'm not going to mention names, I know individuals who also donated resources. See, people always think it's money all the time. It's not always money, resources too, to some of our public schools. And our students were able to utilize these resources, and I'm not going to mention those resources either, because once I do, you now start making connections. And the students were able to use that, and they were able to start thinking about, oh, okay, you know what, let's work on this project, let's work on that project, let's do this, let's do that. I remember in math and in science, because I taught math and science in both what we call JSS here in Nigeria and in SS, that's junior secondary and senior secondary. So I know that once that foundation is right, you will start seeing a lot of things begin to boomerang, a lot of things begin to, that domino effect begin to take place.
Let's talk about India a bit. And when it comes to the tech sector, India, for me, I really take a very keen interest in that country and what it is doing right now to, it has even jump-started its tech sector because, like I mentioned earlier in the program, now we're seeing Indian CEOs, their origin is India, and they are CEOs of many Silicon Valley companies, such as Google, or Alphabet, rather. You see the CEO of Alphabet, even I think IBM, Adobe and Co. They are Indians, and we see what's happening in India. And I had to
Yes.
take a look at what did India do?
Microsoft.
Yes, yes. What did India really do? And I was able to pick three things from it. Number one, India lowered mobile data costs in its country. India embraced,
Yes.
India embraced digital technology, that's digital payments. Then India, what was the third thing they did? I think the national identification thing. I'm not sure we are doing it the way India did it, as is gone chamfa, like they said. But if we take a look at these three things that India has done, what lessons do you think that we can learn really from India? For example, the internet, I think 1 gigabyte of data in India costs about 26 cents. In Nigeria, it's costing close to 1,000, which is about $1 something. So about 26 cents in India. So what can we really learn from this country? Especially with the
With the
developments we
lower
are
cost
seeing
of the
in Lagos.
usage, of course, that's something that we should think about, definitely. And like you said, another thing that will really work on our benefit too will be policies that are actually implemented, executed. So yes, that's another thing. But I will still keep insisting on education. And the reason why I actually can stand by this, you're talking about where India is now. And I mentioned the 90s and the early 2000s. You have to understand that what you're seeing in India is as a consequence of what happened during that same period I'm mentioning to you. When I was in school, both undergrad and graduate school, majority of my classmates in those programs were Indian students. And those Indian students were studying overseas in these programs that I told you where I was learning how to code and program. And a lot of them came back to come and implement what they learned in those places, in Australia, in Canada, in the US. They came back to come and implement it in their own country. And not everything, of course, will be perfect. In fact, I was reading, what's the name of the book? I was reading the book about some of the things that did not go right, which, of course, I mean, that's life. Not every iteration is going to be perfect. You're going to have lots of failures. However, they were able to start trying, and some things worked, some things didn't work, but they tried. So I believe that's where we need to be. And I believe that's where we are now. We are working on, okay, let's try this, let's try that, let's do this, let's do this. We need to have more trials. We need to have more people carrying out those trials, carrying out those iterations, particularly in the sector that I mentioned, which is education, because it's very, 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 very important that this pipeline of students that you and I have mentioned is created. The students who are going to be engineers, students who are going to be scientists. These students that I was mentioning to you that were in school with me in the States were scientists and engineers. They're the ones who went back to India and created the inventions, the companies, the schools also that have made India where it is right now. Let's see. The period I'm talking about for the tech boom will be from the mid-90s, yes, mid-90s, all the way to about, I would say also the mid-2000s, so all the way to about 2005. So that's about a 10 to 15-year period that a lot of things happened. A lot of things happened in Silicon Valley, and of course, that had reverberations all across the world. And then the Indians took advantage of their learnings from that, even China too, and took it back to their own nations and said, okay, you know what, we've seen what worked and what didn't work. Let's start trying this in our own local context.
Okay, I think we'll continue on another day, because this conversation is also dear to my heart because I know that
Go on,
yes,
yes.
yeah, technology can enable a lot of things, but you've just said it all, that the foundation has got to be right. And what is the foundation? Education, really, education, 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 and it must be taken seriously. Thank you very much, Adetola, for joining me today. I'll speak to you sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I've been speaking with Adetola Salau. She's the SSA to the Lagos State Governor on education. She's also the Executive Director, Reform Entrepreneur, as well as an educator. We've been looking at the tech economy in Nigeria, so much to talk about, but that is one sector that really has a silver lining. And, when you talk about tech, you remember these guys, the space tech guys, that brought in, that beam of light, even when the whole world was on a lockdown in 2020, $200 million. That's no easy feat. We're also looking at companies like Kuda and all of that. So I can go on and on. This sector has to be encouraged, but the foundation has got to be right. The declining interest we're seeing in STEM education has to be reversed. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be the change that you want to see. I will see you all again, God willing, tomorrow, this time on this channel. Bye now.